Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ask a Death Doula. Today, I am interviewing Michelle Donaldson. Let me tell you a little bit about Michelle. I'm not going to go too far into it because we're going to do a whole episode on her, which is amazing, and I want you to hear from her. But she is a graduate of Doulagivers Institute. She is a certified end-of-life doula, and her story is inspiring. Again, it's about following your calling and knowing that you're meant to show up and you have a gift to share. However, right now in our medical system in the United States and many other places in the world, there are major gaps in it. And the only way, the best answer, and the only answer is holistic, non-medical support that not only helps the patient and the family, which is the most important thing, but also helps the medical team. So we don't have time restrictions. We act holistically. We act as the eyes and ears for the hospice team. It's beautiful. So she has her own company. She is based in Las Vegas. She is working with a hospice now, and we're going to tell you all about that. Talking about the work that she supports patients and families in. And I really want to hear from her. I also really was extremely impressed with the hospice owner and the hospice that she works for when she first told me this story. And this is what we need: more people that understand the limitations, but also what's really needed. And what I say is bringing back hospice care to the sacred origins in which it was created, which is not the way it's presented today. So, Michelle Donaldson, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Suzanne. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being here. I was so excited to do this podcast, but I remember when we first got on a Zoom, we were talking and you were telling me your story, and I was like, like cheerleading. I was like, yes, this is you were like, I have to tell you this and I have to tell you this. And then the hospice said this, and this is what the family said. And this is exactly why we have doula givers. So let's go back. Can you tell me a little bit about your beginnings, what you were doing before you became an end-of-life doula, and how did you find your way, your path to this work?
So, my history of professionalism, I guess, has been in the healthcare sector since probably I've been about 18 years old, 19 years old. I was an advanced EMT prior to licensed pharmacy technician. And then I got into the pharmacy side, into the sales representative side as well. But I decided that I loved that aspect of my life, but I really wanted to help people more deeply in a profound meaning in life. So that's kind of where I got set with the fact in my mind that I wanted to do something more purposeful for not only myself but for community, and especially at end of life.
You know, I want to stop there in one second, because right now we're talking a lot about legacy just in general, right? And so what is purpose? What is my purpose? What legacy do I want to leave? And like, I'm hearing that when you shared you wanted to do something that was more meaningful, more purposeful, and that does leave a legacy. That's really beautiful. Okay, and so then how did you know it was becoming a doula giver or an end-of-life doula? How did you kind of line up with that?
So working in healthcare here in Las Vegas, I on the pharmacy side, like I said, I do see a lot of death and dying, and just in the networking basis I have here in Las Vegas, we're just a huge community that comes together: assisted living, hospices, memory care. So I just honestly started seeing this trend where people just really needed help in that dying process. And that's when I looked into the program of being an end of life doula. And I was really inspired by you, and did my research, on all the companies, it just really clicked for what your vision was with your company and who you were. And I did little a meeting before that. You had some type of get together about learn about a death doula, end of life doula, I should say. And I was just very inspired. And right away, I said to my husband, I want to do this. And part of my history leading up to this was that I had both of my parents at one point in my time in hospice. My mom was in 21 years ago. My dad was in 5. I had 2 different hospices that I used. The first one I used, I wasn't very happy with. So I decided to use a different company for the time that my dad was in hospice, and I still wasn't completely satisfied. So this really led to my journey of being there at end of life care and giving a completely different experience for patients and their families.
Ugh, you are speaking my language. Yeah, absolutely. And we know it can be, and we know we get one shot at it. We can't go back and do it again. So I
Yes.
love this on your beautiful flyer, and we'll talk about your flyer in a bit, but it says in honor of my parents, Rosemary and Milton. And I just think that's so gorgeous. And it's really true. It's, I feel like I dedicated my book, The Good Death, to all the patients and families, right? And this is such a sad statement. So I pause before I say it because I can't believe it comes out of my mouth. I feel like the training that you took, the Doulagivers training, and a lot of is everything that didn't go well
Right.
and
That's
how it can
exactly.
be better. And the only way that we're going to help families have it go well is by getting out and educating and doing the change. And so when we do that in the honor of our loved ones, it's such a beautiful thing on so many levels. So let's back up for a minute if we can. Can you talk a little bit about those two hospice experiences? Because I just posted the other day, just on a quote post, just on a purple background. All hospices are not, and I put not in capital letters, created equal. And this is something that the public really doesn't understand. So they just don't understand the whole spectrum of it. But if you could talk just a little bit, and again, I'm never really trying to judge or point fingers at people. I do want crystal clear clarity to know where we were, where we are, and where we need to go to get this right. But there's no point in pointing fingers, but it's really important to say, okay, so what did not make that a good experience? So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about that, that would be great.
Sure, and I will even make it as personal as possible because I think it's something that we should discuss. From my personal experience as a family member with my mom,
Mhm,
going through hospice and passing.
mhm,
It was my first experience ever with a hospice, and of course, I was scared because of the stigma.
mhm,
It was my brother and myself, my dad, that were taking care of my mom at end of life. My brother and my dad, unfortunately, do not have any like healthcare experience, and you don't even need healthcare experience necessarily to take care of somebody at end of life, but they were just really scared and worried about every
mhm,
move that was being made at the time.
mhm.
So I was the one and the leader that stepped up, had more experience with this type of situation. And it still wasn't enough. I felt like, where was the nurse at the end? In my mind, looking back, like almost 22 years later, I still feel like she wasn't there. It wasn't explained to me correctly exactly how often the nurse should come. I do know the last 7 days of my mom's life, I believe a hospice nurse came twice. And this is really sad for me to say, but this is the raw truth. I was giving my mom her medications because I was so afraid of her not having her medication because it was never explained to us. Like, we do away with all the maintenance meds. Now we're comfort care. Now we're at the end. I was giving my mom her pills rectally because I didn't know otherwise. And to look back at that is completely scary. And that really took a toll on me, mentally, because I was doing the best I could and didn't even realize it wasn't the right thing to be doing.
And can I just say something? First of all, you did a beautiful job. You were doing the best that you could, absolutely. But also, when you're sharing this story, I keep hearing time, time, time. We're not
Yes.
educating family caregivers yet. Medicare has determined that 98% of the hands-on care and 98% of the hands-on care at end of life is done by the family caregivers when they usually don't know the first thing about how to do that. The model presently at hospice is that the hospice nurse is supposed to teach the caregivers how to do the care. If I'm there for 1 hour once a week and people are petrified and all this is, how are you supposed to teach this? So
Right.
that gap in education leaves you to try and flounder and figure it out and do the best you think. And I mean, it's just not going well. And so I am really sorry. You did the best you could. You did a great job loving your mom, but this is inexcusable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then with my father, I chose again a different hospice, and had the same type of feeling at the end. Like nobody was there for the family. I felt like the hospice nurses weren't there as much. And just, I just felt defeated in the hospice space and how, I mean, I went through it personally twice, so I can't just assume that it happens. I personally went through this. And then after that, I mean, my dad has been gone 5 years, but in my heart, I've been like, this has to be different at the end.
Yeah.
We have to make this better, and it has to come with hospice, you know. And then
Yeah.
that's how we started looking into classes, and I connected so well with your class. And to be honest with you, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel when I started the classes. I was like, is this going to be too much emotionally for me?
Mhm.
I was getting so excited to help people throughout this course. Every time we meet each week, I was more happy to be a part of it and to want to make that difference out there in the community.
Yeah.
It was, like I said, the most purposeful and meaningful thing that I probably have done in my life and continue to do with working with this hospice almost 9 months
Mhm.
now.
That's so beautiful. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. There has to be a better way. And so the thing about this beautiful thing called end of life is that it touches all of us, right? So all around the world. And so when you talk about, we need to get out there and do this, this is a really big ask right now, but it is the most important ask at this moment for multiple reasons. It reminds us how connected we are. It teaches us about life, but it also, we can't go back and do these end of lives again.
Right.
And every single day there's families. And, I mean, you've probably heard my story, but it's really important. When I went to my medical director of my hospice, and this is where I love your owner of your hospice so much. This is over 16 years ago. And I said, the end of life is not going well for most of the patients. We have to do more. And he said, can't, that's all we can offer. Like it was take it or leave it. And the minute we put a dollar amount and a time limit on end of life, we're doing something wrong. And I had come up with this training and I said, what about this? If we're supposed to teach them, he said, this is great. We can't use it. I said, why? He goes, we won't get reimbursed for it. We won't get insurance payment. And finally, I just decided to go to the local library and teach it for free. And, next thing you know, this global movement is formed of bringing back the sacredness and the skills that are non-medical, by the way. And so you
Right.
need medical for hospice is beautiful, but they're so restricted with their time. Most of that, and again, there's different levels of how they practice. Most, unfortunately, are not showing up. And the other thing, Michelle, that I have found that's really significant for me is there's no continuity of through line. And that means there's no continuity in through line, even just saying what's quality of life to you. And
Right.
when would be a time that I would like to go on comfort measures that things can't be reversed? And so starting this whole conversation and then the through line about education and support for the caregiver and setting a sacred space with the vigil and, ritual celebration options and green burial options and things that bring in, for that grief and bereavement all the way through the continuity,
Right.
it's just not going well. And so that's a beautiful thing. So you followed your heart, you knew there was a better way. And then what happened? You graduated, and I just, you remind me a little bit of me at times when you were telling your story. You graduated, and what happened then?
So I graduated. Well, I actually decided to take the test on my father's birthday, which was July 10th.
Beautiful.
So passed the test and said, okay, let's do this. And my goal was to do something bigger than just become certified and take the classes.
Yeah.
It was, like I said, to make a statement and an impact in the community here in Las Vegas where I live. So shortly after that, I had some, other stuff going on with my job and some commitments. So then the beginning of this year, I was like, okay, I really have to hone in on my company name and just get this going and just roll this out. And so things got exciting the beginning of the year, and I decided on my company name. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to look to my partners here in my community and talked with this hospice that I currently partner with was the first hospice that I talked to and the only hospice so far. And they said, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. We've never had anything like this before. I brought them my flyer that I made and just some more education on myself and what my vision looked like. And immediately within the first like time of meeting them, I'm like, oh my gosh, we need this. We need you. And it just ran from there.
Yeah, it ran from there. So I really love this hospice that you're working for. So we can shout out Unified Care Hospice, Las Vegas, family owned hospice, but has a holistic approach and
Yes.
such a beautiful approach about the patient, about the family, about holistic, about community. And that check, 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 all beautiful. And so you talked with the owner, right, who's a doctor,
Correct.
Dr. Timothy Beckett,
Correct.
and he got it right away. And
He did.
then he asked you, I think, what you want to be paid, and you were like, okay, and you came up with a number. And
Mhm.
then the next day he said, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. He sent me the offer and said, let's do it. No hesitation. No hesitation at all.
And that's how things are done. Because when you know what's needed, you know. And then we go up here. This is just a universal kind of lesson. We go up here and it gets all twisted around, and no one ever make like healthcare is there's a whole thing there. So I love that he knows this, and it's not a surprise that he did that, because the reflection on the entire hospice company has that beautiful energy that really cares about the patient. So tell me about your journey working with them. Tell me about the difference that you're making with patients, families, and the hospice team.
Well, I have to give a shout out to, because going into this, I thought, you know what? Are the nurses going to be accepting of me? How are they going to see me as my role? Just in general, like this is a new role for them, new role for myself, and getting to know each other. But I can tell you right away, they were excited. They were, we chat all the time, about patients, and they're excited to utilize my services and respect me. And obviously I really respect everybody I work with there, but that makes a difference too, because the team, it was so accepting and so wanting to learn more, where it's like they're, what I should say also too, at every admission, my flyer is with the patients.
So tell
And
us how that works. So so this hospice, because hospice is so important, everyone. And this is the
Mhm.
thing that we're trying to say, is that hospice nurses are absolutely amazing.
Yes.
And they're literally killing themselves trying to make a difference.
Yes. Yes.
And what we want to do is help them as well, right? Be the eyes
Yes.
and ears for them. And that's where our training has so much medical for the non-medical. So you can alert them of any changes, what's going on.
Yes.
So tell me how that admission, a new hospice potential patient comes on, the admission nurse comes in and then gives your flyer.
Well, actually, the marketing team
Okay.
has it with them, and it starts there with showing my flyers, showing my face, and getting to know my role right away. And
Okay.
then if they want a doula at the beginning, or they decide that they want to wait on any type of modalities, but usually sometime or another within that time that a nurse has the patient, they'll come and say, you know what, Michelle, I think I've talked to the patient about you, and they're willing to see if you want to come out and do a visit, and or daughter really needs some help too. So it's always being talked about, my role within this hospice, which is amazing. They don't, they started at, the marketing side of things and them meeting the patient, but it continues throughout the journey of our patients and their families to constantly remind them, hey, we have somebody that can help with this. Or if it comes up where we may have a younger patient and they have children, and they immediately say, let's bring Michelle in for a legacy project, let's bring her in for help more support of the family, because they're going to need it. So there's
Okay.
times like that where
I
it's,
love that. Yeah.
yes,
So it's not only right at the beginning, but it's all
yes,
through it, the support.
it,
But
it
what
definitely
I
is.
what I really love is how it works. So you get the nurse who says we have a patient and a family, they want to meet with you. You meet with them, and what do you do on that meeting?
I see every meeting and every patient and family is a different, I have an assessment of every patient and family, but what their needs are. So, it's active listening. It's learning what that family has gone through up until that point, what they're going through now, and obviously the anticipation of what's going to be.
Hmm.
And, like I said, every family is different. So there may be families that would like to see me twice a month. There may be
Hmm.
families that want to see me once a week. I have a patient that I see once a week, and we've created such an amazing bond. But what I give them is a safe space, and we talk about different things. We talk about final wishes. We talk about like their vigil. How do they want it at the end? Do they want music? Do they want flowers? Do they want pets near
Hmm.
them? What
Hmm.
people do they want in their room if they can? I mean, we realize that
Hmm.
people live other, countries or states or family, and their best scenario in their mind is what I want to know how they want it in the end. And I've been at vigils where I've right at the end I've asked the patient, is there anybody that we need to call? Do you want to call anybody? And we're on the phone calling people while they're I had an individual, he was actively dying. Up until that day we died, we were calling people, and he was listening to them, and they were talking to him, and he was able to say a couple things. So it's things where the families tell me, or like at the end when there's an opportunity for a picture, I ask the family, do you want a picture now? Some of them kind of look at me like scared. Afterwards, they say to me, thank you for that. Thank you for even
Wow.
offering. It's not even something we were thinking about doing.
They can't think at this,
Right.
and that's really what I find, that the families are so petrified because they don't know that they missed this whole opportunity this
Yeah.
whole time. Even things that are common sense that we would think, they can't even think. It's so unfair to put that on there. So really, it's holding space, it's advocacy, and it's the eyes and ears for the hospice team.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
which I love so much. And so you make that assessment plan, and then you tell the hospice when you're going to meet them. And
Correct.
so that's great based on that. And of course, everything is always fluid because some things might need more, and usually that's
Absolutely. It's
what
ever
happens.
changing. Hmm.
So you had told me a story about an incredible visit with a woman. And if you would share that story about you being there and her taking care of her husband. And again, I feel like she was in a petrified state, didn't know, and you were able to get the hospice nurse on the phone, which on-call hospice nurse is available, but there's a difference sometimes with being on the phone than being with a family. And you were able to be that bridge in such a
Yes.
critical time. Can you share that story? Because I feel like this is the essence of what this role can do.
Sure. So this one I wasn't on at the beginning, but the hospice nurse ended up getting me involved in the last like week or so of when this patient was still with us. But I did go to the home, so it was a husband and wife only in the home. Wife was the main caregiver, and she looked so relieved to see me. They had reminded her about me and what my role was, and we were sitting there talking, and I said, I would like to go take a look at your husband, and just pay my respects and be there for him too. He wasn't speaking or anything. He was actually, I found out that he was actually transitioning at that time, but we didn't really realize it. But so like I said, I paid my respects, and she was just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I'm doing this right. He actually had the death rattle. It was starting, the secretions were building up. He was, I think, he was 80 percent room or on oxygen at that time. He was fading. So I took her, aside, and I said, "Are you comfortable with the medications?" Because he kind of was grimacing, like he was in pain, kind of like doing different moaning. And she said, "In my culture, my family tells me I can't use the morphine. I can't use lorazepam. I can't. It's not the way that I need to do this." And I said, "Listen, you have to do what's best for your husband right now, and for you seeing this, experiencing this. You have high anxiety over this, and I want to help you, understand. I want you to know that there's help here." And she said, well, there are medications over here like this atropine. I don't really know what this is for. And I said, well, that's actually for the secretions and that noise that you're hearing. And I said, you know what? I need to send a message to the nurse and I want to have some education for you to feel better. And she said, okay, that would be great. But up until that point, she was very hesitant of she didn't wasn't even considering the medications at that point. So I reached out to the nurse. The nurse called while I was there at the visit. She went over everything because, again, my role is non medical. I can
Mhm.
talk about certain things, but there's no administering of medications. There's nothing. There's
Mhm.
just guidance and resources for that nurse and that caregiver or patient to connect.
Mhm.
Um, so I was there the whole time that conversation was had. I went in back into the room with a caregiver with a patient. After being instructed by the nurse of how to handle the medication, she went in, gave the medications as the nurse told her. I waited there about 30 minutes after, and she said, "Oh my gosh, he's not making that gurgling noise anymore, and he's not grimacing, he's not gas, doing the different moans." And she said, "Thank you." Thank you for helping me because I was not going to give him these medications.
Mhm.
So that experience really helped me too because I was
Mhm.
like, again, the eyes and ears and the
It's
comfortableness
everything.
and just repeating those conversations. The nurses, I love them, I respect them, but not always can they constantly re-give education on medications. That's why when I go, I see like this caregiver being scared, but scared of giving the medications, but scared of watching what she's watching in front of her. And I'm thinking to myself, as a caregiver, I don't want her having these thoughts and feelings and
Yeah.
nightmares after he passed on
Mhm.
when she could have taken care of the situation at that time.
Do you know, Michelle, that I get so many messages and emails from families who are holding on to trauma
Right.
about how that end of life went? They didn't give it, they gave it, they not sure they did it right. It just what the sounds, I mean, just the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so, it takes more than one time to usually learn something. So it's not that the nurse is not, she's not, or he's not there a lot. And there's just such breaks in the system because fear, which most people are fearful of end of life because we just treat it like,
Right.
we should, and it shows up. You
Right.
can't learn, you can't absorb things. And so now you have, I mean, I always try and put myself in this position. We have somebody whose loved one is dying under their roof, and they're responsible for the care when they don't know how to do that. How unfair and crazy
Right.
is this system? And
Right.
then I mean, and then of course they're completely traumatized. And the person usually doesn't have the best end of life because the whole thing is kind of disjointed. This has to change. And so the role that you play, having no time restrictions, being the eyes and ears, you're not taking place of a hospice nurse. You're seeing the gaps and you're there saying, oh, this woman is the person's dying and she doesn't know what to do. Let's get the hospice
Right.
nurse on the phone.
Yes.
Let's make sure we
Absolutely.
have it. And I'll stay with her to make sure things are good. That's priceless and invaluable. That's amazing. And she'll remember that forever. And that's soul work because she'll remember that end of life going well forever. And if it doesn't go well, we remember that forever as well. So, how fulfilling is this work to you?
It's without getting emotional,
Yeah.
it's the best thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah. Me too. The most rewarding work that I've ever done in my whole life. The
Yes.
most meaningful, purposeful work I've
Yes.
ever done in my whole life. Um, you can't put a price on it.
No. And
And yeah.
people ask me, how do you do this? And I do it because I feel like I'm changing people's lives for the better and trying to provide comfort and a safe space for them for something like you said. There's no redo overs. This is how it is. And I thought at the beginning that I was going to come home like really crying a lot and having a hard time because I'm really an empath. Um, but I haven't been. I've been coming home saying, oh my gosh, this caregiver called me because she needed my advice. And again, purposeful and knowing in my heart, like there's a big difference. It's making a big difference. And I'm not just patting myself on in the back as an end of life doula. I feel like our role is so needed, and just the families really appreciate it because they're getting something extra, like you said, an extra eyes and ears for them too.
So, you know what I really love about the work that I do is, yes, you're making a difference, but you're making a difference every day.
Yes.
And you can't ask for feeling more fulfilled and meaning. And so we know that the healthcare system is struggling, and we know that it's going to continue. And that's what happens, and it's fine. But we also forgot that death is not a medical experience, it's a human one.
Yes.
And this is a skill that 100 years ago was handed down from a grandmother to a grandchild. People died at home. Grandmothers taught children how to care, and we did it naturally. And so, end of life doulas, doula givers, you're bringing back this sacred awareness to that. So, you're showing up in these spaces. You're bringing back the awareness of holding space, that we don't have to be frightened with that education, but you're also providing the filling of that gap for these amazing hospices like yours, because they're not all created equal by any means. And there's no, I don't want to go down negative roads, but I also would say, if you're working in hospice care, own a hospice because of the profits, please don't.
Right.
Just please don't be in this space. Find it somewhere else, because we can't skimp in this area. Um, and there's a lot of that going on. And so being able to come in and fill the gap, and again, not just for the patient and family, but for the hospice team as well, is the answer. And you're doing that so beautifully. So what would you like to see happen in the future? If you could, a magic wand, what do you think will be happening, and what would you like to see happen?
I would love to see more hospices take on the role of an end of life doula. I
Mm-hmm.
think that they would see the huge difference in patient care and and family satisfaction as well.
Yeah.
It works. I hope that this hospice sets a precedent to what is happening in our future. And even our owner, Dr. Beckett, from the moment I met him, even before I came on board, said, I hope that our community follows this suit. I hope that we do good in a community with end of life doulas.
So here's the thing. I got chills. When you raise the bar, and this is really what Doula Givers is doing as well. There's a whole thing coming about all hospices are not created equal, and I'm not trying to fault, but I am saying, look, we've got to get this clear.
Yes.
Knowing that we need to talk to families about, they are the consumer and you have choices. And here's the questions that you want to ask a potential hospice. Do you have doulas? Are you on call? You know, what do you provide for caregiver support? All of the things, so that it can really force the hand of people that are not doing all of the right things to provide the care that these families and patients desperately need. So, yes, you will be setting the precedents. And there's a couple of other hospices sprinkled that have that same beautiful, sacred philosophy. And when we elevate that message and say, this is the standard, then other people are either going to have to rise to it, or they're going to have to find a different thing to make money from. So he definitely is. And I really just admire anyone in the space that shows up to say, this is what has to be done, and we're going to do it. And so that's going to change the world. So it's such an exciting, so I know that it is going to happen. So it's great that we have this here. I hope to come to Las Vegas and do some events out there, because there's a lot of doulas. Do you know that Las Vegas has Death Doula Day on April 20th as an official celebratory day in Las
I,
Vegas?
I did not know that.
Well, yes, they do, because that's National Death Doula Day, and one of our doula giver graduates had somehow got the mayor to declare that. So
Wow.
just There's a lot. So there's a lot going on that's calling Las Vegas. So we may be
Yeah.
doing a lot of trainings out there coming your way, but it's just so exciting. And what's really great is when we see a lot of the things that are not going well in our world, there's so many that actually are. And this role is. And so I want to thank you for following your heart. That's a life lesson, right? And for showing up and holding the space for these patients and families, but also sharing your message that, this is a much bigger message that people need to be hearing because everyone's going to have an end of life. And knowing how to do that and getting the right support and kindness can make all the difference in the world. And it does. So,
Absolutely.
Michelle, how can people get in touch with you if they want to follow up and have any questions?
They can email me at, let me, Open Arms Doula. Oh, I'm so
Okay.
sorry. Michelle at openarmsdoula.net. I actually have my website too, openarmsdoula.net.
Okay. Beautiful. We'll put that in the show notes below. But working for
And
the
my phone number
hospice,
if you'd like.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
And my phone number if they would like to.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll start with the email, the website. We'll field any calls for you and deliver them. But it is really exciting because I think people are going to be extremely inspired by the role that you play, and it is going to be the template for moving forward. So, Unified Care Hospice, what you guys are doing, how you're doing it. You've done it, and what an exciting thing to be setting that for the ripple effect that's going to take place in the world. And every one patient and family we help, it's such a win, but we're helping so many.
Yes.
So thank you so very much. You are wonderful. And I appreciate your time and the work that you do, and to be continued.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
your Doulagivers Institute is just amazing. So I would recommend it honestly to anybody that feels a calling to do this.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's medical for the non-medical. All right, everyone. Well, if you have the calling, join us. We need you. And thank you so much, everyone, for being on this episode of Ask a Death Doula. If you have questions, again, you can put them in the show notes and we'll make sure to answer each and every one of them. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye, everybody.